Once the policymakers have figured out what policy alternative they would like to use to address the problem, the policy must be passed into law by a legislative body. It goes through the formal legal means and becomes part of the body of law. At this stage, we consider this policy legitimation. Policies passed into law must be accepted by the majority of the public for them to be fully legitimized. Policies without the majority of public support, and ultimately viewed as illegitimate, are going to have a difficult time being implemented in next stages, and this ultimately will affect the successfulness of the policy. Once the policy is passed and legitimized, it becomes what is called enabling legislation. This empowers the relevant government actor to then go about implementing the policy. In this stage of the policy-making process, the government actor organizes, interprets the law as given to them, and figures out how to apply it correctly. This typically is done by the executive branch in two processes. First, rulemaking. Bills as written by legislative bodies typically are pretty vague. There's a lot of gray areas to them, and thus it puts a lot on the executive branch to figure out how the legislature wants the bill to actually be implemented. Because of this, the executive branch does a great deal of interpreting the intent of the bill. Yet, anytime you interpret anything, a certain degree of subjectivity enters into it. And because bills often deal with certain regulations over individuals' behavior, once the bill is implemented and put in place, it comes into conflict with the behavior of private citizens. At which point, the second phase of policy implementation takes place. We call this administrative adjudication. Conflicts between private behavior and the law ultimately come to a head as complaints and are brought before the courts to address it. The tug and pull of the legal process will slowly define how to actually interpret the bill and how to accurately apply it. The next step of the policy-making process is evaluating the policy. You ask yourself, did the policy work? We look at the policy outcomes and try to identify which of the goals from the program actually were achieved and which fell short. As you can imagine, this is a very difficult process to do, and very often, because of the difficulty, policymakers tend to disregard this portion of the process. However, if policymakers are accurately doing their job, they'll enter into the final phase of this process, assessing a change. Using feedback from whether the policies actually met the goals of the program and figured out if they met it or fell short, the policymakers can then tweak the process, tweak the bill, tweak the policy, and start the process all over. Remember, this is the policy cycle, and it never ends.